for your comments. We have our next presenter, Hafsa Rafi, an undergraduate student from Aligarh Muslim University, located in Aligarh, India, sharing with us her thesis titled Skill Development Center in Urban Villages at location Shabiri, Ghaziabad, India, guided by architect T.R. Varsi under the theme Urban Management. Can we hear from you, Hafsa?
Yeah, thank you. Is my screen visible to you guys?
Yes, it is.
Okay, just give me a moment. I don't know what's something's wrong with this. Okay, yeah, greetings to the esteemed jury. My thesis on Skill Development Center in Urban Villages of Delhi NCR intends to contribute to the ongoing discourse on urban management and community development by proposing a holistic approach that combines skill development with urban management principles for the upliftment of urban villages in Delhi NCR. It is an intervention in the form of a facility which aims to build long-term skills and assets for the villagers, enabling them to regain control of their lands from powerful parties, be it leaders or developers. The SDC, or the Skill Development Center, is the first tactical step towards a long-term goal of community-managed urban villages. Let me give you a brief background on urban villages of Delhi NCR, and I'll introduce to you my thesis brief. As the NCR boundary expanded to support the necessary infrastructure it required, it engulfed villages on its periphery. Due to the urban influence, the villages which were still exhibiting rural characteristics developed swiftly and rather chaotically to accommodate the growing needs of the metropolitan. As a result of which, these areas have a higher density than the city, they are overburdened, and they lack any civic infrastructure of any sort. Now, why do we want to improve these villages is because it constitutes about 38.3% of the land area of the city, but it has about 60% of its population. Unruly expansion of Delhi has made the redevelopment of urban villages very difficult due to the jurisdiction ambiguance that we have. The areas don't constitute the village areas, these areas don't come into the urban areas as well as of now. Now, the PSU banks do not provide any kind of credit facilities, and the complications are maximum in Delhi because these little pockets of land have been unnoticed by government for so long that the situation has deteriorated over time, especially in terms of public infrastructure. Now, these are since they went a drastic transformation, there are physical, socio-economic, economic, and political transformation that happened over a period of, let's say, 2 years or something, which is very short. So the houses which used to be courtyard houses, they were divided and they were made into smaller rooms so that they could be rented and people could actually extract their livelihood. What happened was that during 1910s or something, there was a land acquisition act which was performed to acquire agrarian lands in and around these areas. And as a result of which the small farmers lost their livelihood. With the government compensation, they either decided to settle somewhere else or develop these small properties to get rent as their basic livelihood. Due to this, there was a change in demography completely. The population was majorly comprised of migrants instead of the native inhabitants, which was a cultural shift as well. The economic base was completely disrupted because people took to urban employment instead of the agrarian-based society that we had. And in some places, we did see that a political leader or a developer had the hold of development in those areas. So what we saw in the end was increased population load on finite resources, which led to rampant illegal construction, violating any safety measures. The lack of civic and social infrastructure facilities worsened the situation, made it to deteriorate to the extent that we can see that some stages of urban villages cannot go past 1 or the first picture in 2. And due to the absence of a strong outline governance framework, there is no authority that can be held accountable. This is what the rural-urban interface looks like at these situations. It is heavily overburdened, and there are no amenities. There is a meandering, congested network of roads. Because of jurisdiction ambiguity, they cannot be leased or offered up as collateral. Hence, no finances can be raised for the development. Inclusive development for the territorial integration, because these urban villages provide economic advantages such as cheap land prices, inexpensive housing alternatives to the service classes. They have become a hub of small businesses, and these neighborhoods, they are coming up as diverse but social. They have a strong social cohesive fabric. And yes, their social and physical environment needs constant upkeep. But with proper infrastructure and subsequent integration, they can prove to be an asset of great importance, like it happened with Shenzhen and its urban villages. So these, as I see, and this is what we have right now: the situation, opportunity, and a path. And now we're exploring urban management principles within a skill development framework to empower the local community for holistic development. And this became the basis for my thesis objectives for this thesis. And yes, we explored certain case studies because this proposal was relatively new when I was researching it. I started working around it on 2019, presented in 21. So it was a long time back. And we studied Shenzhen because it had similar implications than the urbanization trends that we have in Delhi NCR. There was a migration shift here. 90% of the population was migrant population. It came up to be a vibrant type neighborhood. Baishizo became a subsidiary of economic development for Shenzhen because of its connectivity. It provided cheap economic accommodation to its population. But yes, it was overburdened. It had meandering framework. The houses transformed, as you can see here, from 1-story to 5-story walkouts. These were called handshake houses, and living conditions deteriorated over time. So there was this thing that I was researching and aptly represented the current framework of development that they were employing. As I said earlier, the population was 90% migrants, which were the inhabitants, and 10% of the villages might be inhabitants. The rest were the owners. The current framework of development, government consented the villagers and leased the land to developers for any development. This wasn't working at that time, so the government proposed to relocate the migrants to another position and convert the whole neighborhood into a modern neighborhood by the consent of the villagers. But this is something, they studied the demographic and they came up with proposals for each and every division of the society. They said that they will consult both the migrants and the villagers, and the government will lease the land to developers and ask them to invest in training programs for the overall economic development. And ultimately, the World Bank did initiate this, and they developed a skill development program for this. Another case study we did was Ayanagar. We're doing these case studies to study the successful paradigms that have been happening here and there. We need to see if something like Bashizo was actually possible in an Indian context. And yes, Ayanagar, as it turned out, is a story of spontaneous settlement that emerged to fulfill the housing needs of growing migrant population on the edge of Faridabad. It's a town here in the NCR region. The settlement exhibited great autonomy in building and maintenance, enhanced survivability, and improved social and individual security. It reduced the dominance of vehicular transport, and therefore it was deemed important to be developed. It was studied for its framework of urban development, and it gave us unique insights into community mobilization, habitat design, which prioritized public spaces, and the importance of raising human and financial resources and document learning, basically. What they did was they proposed an empowered people's parliament in which they consulted the interest groups and the community for defined demands and formed a people's parliament called the Ayanagar Vikas Samiti. Then they referred these demands to local boards and autonomous body for a comprehensive habitat development plan for the area. Another case studies we did was Sharanam. This is amidst addressing backdrop. Sharanam Center for Rural Development became a center which aimed to counter illicit land appropriation, environmental devastation, and poverty by utilizing the workers on the site. Between 2007 to 2014, it engaged over 300 laborers, channeling half the construction expenses into the community via wages. This initiated elevated skill set, and empowered the unskilled individuals to become independent contractors. This is something that resonates with my thesis ideology, and it not only had a sustainable impact on the environment, but also merged uplifted a degenerated community. Another case studies were Manav Sadhana and Community Canvas School, which had the same implications as Sharanam, and they were explored for the multifunctional use of spaces, which is actually the meaning of management in urban terms, basically. So we did pick one town to consolidate our studies and actually see if one model, a paradigm can be developed, and the studies can be replicated or can be scalable in some sense. So because urban villages are a microcosm of urbanizing India, they are happening everywhere in Delhi, in and around Bangalore, in and around Mumbai, actually everywhere. So we picked Shaberi because
I'd request you to wind
okay, yeah, Shaberi because the land here and there were affected by its development, and it showed extreme potential in terms of public participation, and it had a lot of area for development. Same issues. It was primarily an agricultural village, which saw a lot of which saw a lot of construction activities. The land which was intended for industrial development was actually turned into real estate development, which led to a loss of opportunities for them. And eventually they saw rising urban land vulnerability due to the encroachment of, as you can see, these real estate developments, big townships, and these are the Abadi areas that we can see. So the purpose was to, when we identified the demographic, there was an opportunity for demographic dividend because the women, which were about 45% of the population, weren't working, and the men had actually migrated out to NCR areas for better job opportunities. The proposal we came up for was this. We wanted to establish a governance framework, but we required development of human resource before, so that it can be made into informed public decisions. The skill development center would consist of.
okay,
yeah,
conclude now.
sorry.
Yeah,
okay, yeah, just give me like another 30 seconds and I'll be done. I'm sorry. The skill development center would act as an economic facilitator, community upliftment, and cultural integration. There was a comprehensive site study done regarding the chosen site, and why was it chosen. It was 15 acres in area, and it was nearest to the Abadi areas. There, the major two entrances are these and these. One, this is was the service entrance, the main entrance, and there are pedestrian pathways here. We did a comprehensive study for studying the commercial potential of this area and the upcoming things. This is what we came up with, the domains that we have. Villages, the visitors domain, the villages and visitors domain, and the villages domain, which will be control integration mostly. And this is a design that we came up with through the findings and through the informal conducted interviews that we did. We found out that they needed a flexible space which could tailor to their demands, and they didn't know what they want, but yes, they wanted the space to acquaint them to mold themselves according to their needs. So we came up with about 20% of built structure, and the rest of it was open land, and most of it had flexible layouts. We gave opportunities for urban horticulture and an exhibition center for displaying their crafts and everything, for conducting exhibitions, etc. And this was how the spaces were supposed to look like. The library, with all of these spaces were with flexible layouts so that they can accommodate the growing needs. And that's an amphitheater which was used for cultural gathering spaces, for village sabhas, etc. After these, we developed a nuanced understanding of the management challenges that Shaberi had, and we identified key factors that can enhance the effectiveness of SDCs in Shaberi and the other similar implications, other similar areas. We did come up with a.
Ask you to stop now.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and thank you for listening. So,
I invite the panelists to share their comments on the presentation. Can we start with Architect Nicola?
Sure. Thanks again for the presentation. Of course, as we said to the other colleague, be really, try to select and manage work better with time management. And I think in your proposal, One of the main comments I also had while looking at your material was to try to be more selective about the materials you show, because even in the materials you delivered, you had so many images, so many materials. So for sure, you worked a lot. So I don't know how many time you spent on your project, but I'm sure you worked really, really a lot. But I think you need to, be more selective in what you convey, especially in like one-shot presentations like this one. Especially because if you present something to someone who doesn't have any idea about your project, if you put too many informations, you risk to have the opposite reaction. So instead of making him understand everything, maybe it's quite the opposite. But I think in your presentation, you raised another really important topic. So the role of migrants and villagers as city users. So as an active part of the city as well as the relationship between villages and the city, and also the productive and cultural landscape. I found really useful and interesting some words and tools you used in this presentation, as well as in the materials we saw. For example, you mentioned a scalable approach in design, which is extremely important and useful in the design, and as well as the phasing approach you had in the materials you delivered. So in an urban design project, the phasing approach is crucial because you never know what can actually happen in the development.
Okay.
So if, I don't know, you have less fundings, if something happens, you always need to be ready to, let's say, redirect the project. And another really important aspect, which is, of course, for you, but even for the other presenters, is the importance of the context we also mentioned. Because in some images, you always, let's say, treat the project as a floating island, while on the other hand, you actually have something at the edges. The city, the project doesn't stop where the actual site is. So always what happens in 1 meter, 10 meter, 100 meter is always have an impact on the project. But I think in general, your project was really interesting. You really managed all the inner spaces of the project. It was well stratified. You have all the different functions, but not really zoned. So it was really, all the functions were really mixed. So it was, even all the renders you provided, they really conveyed the idea of the space you wanted to design. But yeah, the main comment is try in the future to be really selective. So really show the most important and crucial aspects. And yeah, I think that is the most important thing that you can take. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Keep that in mind. Thanks.
We hear from you, Dr. Manoj, next.
Yeah, in fact, let me be a bit critical here. In fact, this was mentioned earlier too, and I'm also trying to make you understand that, an opportunity that is given to you should be well utilized. So what happened here is like two things. One is you spoke about skill development and how skill development can be used as in advantage to the spatial development of a particular area. So I had a lot of hopes when you started with the topic, because I always believe that the strength of people and the community, and the skill is something which we always negate in the process of planning. And I always believe that this particular area is really important, because I think the development of skill and conversion of that into the spatial dimension brings in a lot of change and energy and what do you call this various components, parameters of development into the process. I was expecting that from you when you started this, and I don't know, somewhere you have missed it out. That's what I have to say, because in this process, when you started with skill development and you diverted into your case studies, and I found a total disjunct between those case studies and the initial components that you spoke. That is where it went wrong. And later, what happened was you suddenly lost. You were not able to really come up with your solutions, or maybe you were not able to come up with the last part where you lost your time. So, frankly speaking, what happened was these three components. The first part is the theoretical construct of the skill development. and the components of skill development. Then second part is what you understood from the case study and relating the case study to the real theoretical construct. And the last part is how you demonstrate that, how you convert them into kind of, the spatial dimensions. And frankly speaking, I was not able to understand. I'm so sorry to say that, but that's what happened, in fact.
No, sir, I understand. Proof of that. Thanks for your comments.
Yeah.
Can we hear from you, Dr. Nabil, next?
Yes, thank you very much. I in support with what my colleagues have said. And hi, Hafsa. It's really an interesting project. Thank you very much. I enjoyed your presentation, although you didn't take that much time to present the most important part. As you know that urban villages or outskirts of the city or urban edges or peripheries or whatever the term that you're going to use, they have their own morphological code or morphological patterns. So and sometimes, or the majority of the patterns, they are different from the city that they are adjacent to. So if we agree on that, when we compare your solution at the end, which is like the angled gridiron design, it might seem a little bit alien or might seem not justified that much why you have considered this morphology of this pattern or this spaces or the ratio between solid and voids and all of these things. Maybe in the future you might learn these issues from the case studies and you extract these issues and try to understand your case and try to understand its morphology and then come up with the solution. Because this link between understanding what was learned from the case studies and how you're going to implement it on your own case, considering my colleagues' comment about the surrounding context, this is a missing link. I don't know if you have done this exercise or not.
Sir, I have done this comprehensively. In fact, I did the morphological study
Show
of the
it
whole
to
area.
us. You need to show it to us. Yes. I mean, don't hide these issues. These are the major important points that demonstrates that you have done your homework. Whatever the outcome is, we were going to say, okay, that's fine, but because it was based on something, it's not just it's there. That's the trick. That's the trick we try always to say to our students. Whatever the outcome is, but you need to justify it, and you need to have some sort of a base to it. So please, next time, show the process. Don't just
Yes,
show
sir,
the
yeah.
end result. Okay, but briefly, of course, to be able to present it. Okay, so
yeah.
I don't have any further comment. Thank you very much for your project.
So thank you for your comments, sir.
Thank you for your